Meet Janet. Now, Janet wants to look more youthful, but there are currently 4 hair mistakes that are standing in her way. If you're a veteran of the series, why don't you go to the comment section below and let me know if you can spot the 4 specific mistakes that I'm currently seeing. But if you're new to the series, welcome. My name is Justin Hickox. I've been doing hair since 1995, and this series is simple. I help people get past their hair struggles so that they can look more youthful. And it's all based on an email that they send me. Before we dive into that, you can listen to me babble on about hair. Speaking of babble, I want to say a huge thank you to Babbel for sponsoring this video. See, do you see what I did there? Oh, it's sponsorships like this that help me continue to make videos for you. Now, if you like to travel like my wife and I do, and you want to learn how to say super important things like, where's the bathroom? Babbel with their app helps you learn how to speak a brand new language in just 3 weeks. It is one of the top language learning apps in the entire world. I've personally been wanting to learn Spanish for, well, my entire life, I feel like, and it's an app like Babbel that will actually help me be able to do that in a short period of time. That's a pretty big deal because I'm not that smart. Now, if you use the link below, you can get 60% de descuento. That's 60% off in Spanish. And also, that's what I mean. I'm not that good at other languages, but I'm learning, so I feel good about it. So why don't you learn a new language? Head to the link below in the description and save yourself 60%. Thanks, Babbel. And now let's read Janet's email. Thank you so much for any help you can give me. My hair is gray, fine, and wavy. My bangs tend to go up instead of down, even with product and styling. They were cut too short, and I'm hoping with a longer length, it'll be less of an issue. I'm wondering what to do with them at any length. I'm not sure if I have a large forehead since I'm used to seeing it all the time, but I have lost hair since my youth. My first concern is finding the most flattering length and cut for my full face. Right now, I think it's cut and or styled a little too short in front. I was trying to avoid it hitting my shoulders and flipping. Would more of an angle work? I saw an old makeover you did where the hair in the back went very short, but I'm guessing with fine, wavy hair, this might not work. It takes a lot of work to get most of the wave out, and I don't always succeed. I'm really looking for what is the most flattering, and then maybe another option that requires less styling. I'm hoping I can forego coloring, but let me know if I'm not doing myself any favor. Okay, now mistake number 1 is that there's no connection from her bangs and into the actual length. Meaning there's no real layering in the front below the bangs. Now, the problem that this is creating is that it's not only giving her a lot more of a kind of square and bulky feel at the bottom, which you can see in this front photo right here, but it's also actually causing, I think, part of the problem that she's having with her bangs. Now, in the email that she wrote me, she said that her bangs are kind of maybe too short right now and they're causing her some issues, and she's hoping that as they get a bit longer, they might actually function better. And she's probably not completely off. If we actually connected the front a bit more, they would actually function much better for her. Now, you'll see a little bit more of what I'm talking about here as we move through these mistakes, but I think connecting these bangs into the layers in the front will make a huge difference. Now, from the profile, you can also see that this added lack of connection is creating a much more square overall feel to the shape, which is actually adding more squareness to her face shape. And that's something that we also kind of want to work against. If we added a little bit more layering to connect those bangs into the front, this is what that would look like. Now, as you can see, cleaning up that line helps to give the shape a stronger feel, and adding more connection in the front is really helping it open up her face, taking away some of the squareness and starting to lift the eye up the shape. And from the profile, this is actually helping to accentuate the cheekbones even a little bit more because, again, that line isn't so square. Now, mistake number 2 is that there's just no beveling or real layering in the nape in the back. Now, if you look at this profile photo, you can see that that little bit of extra bulk in the bottom is really drawing the eye back and down the shape. Now, this is actually compounding a little bit of the squareness that the front layers were creating we just talked about. So I think if we actually added a little bit more shape to the back by beveling that a bit more, they go a long way to alleviating some of that squareness and lifting the eye up the shape. So if we did actually bevel that shape a bit more, this is what that would look like. Now, as you can see, once we pull some of that bulk out of the nape, it immediately starts to draw the eye up the shape. This also helps create the illusion of more volume on top due to having less volume on the bottom. This also creates the illusion that the angle is actually a little bit more severe than it actually is, which is really good because we want that angle to follow the jawline, but we don't want to have to leave it too angled or too long in the front. Okay, mistake number 3 is that there's just a lack of layering on top, but really just kind of in general, it's almost kind of one length. Now, the biggest problem with this is, 1, it's heavy on top because of that. So you're getting less volume on top, which is compounding the illusion of the volume on the sides, which is bringing the eye down the shape. But the number 2 problem is that it doesn't give the hair any movement. So there's no real ability for this shape to get movement and texture. And many times that can kind of leave, especially a bob shape, feeling a bit like a helmet, a little bit overly contrived. So if we were to layer this a bit more, not only would we get a little bit more volume on top, which would take some of the bulk out of the sides and also create the illusion that there's less volume on the sides because there's more volume on the top. It would also help us to get a lot more movement, which would make the overall shape feel a lot more current and overall feel a lot more youthful. So if we did add a little bit more layering on the top, this is what that would look like. Now, while this does start to bring the eye up the shape by creating more volume, what you're not really able to see is the movement. There's no real way for me to kind of Photoshop, if you will, the movement into this shape. But we will kind of touch on that in a little bit when we get into the curveball, so you'll kind of have a little bit of a better idea of what that movement would look like. Let's move on to mistake number 4. Okay, mistake number 4, I wouldn't really call this necessarily a mistake. Maybe it's more of a missed opportunity. Now, in Janet's email, she did ask about color. She said that she would prefer to stay away from color. However, she wanted to know if she wasn't doing herself any favors by not doing color. If you look at her hair color, this is actually not an uncommon color. Many times we find that it starts to come in gray, very kind of monotone. There's not a lot of discrepancy between the light and the dark, which means that it overall just kind of starts to look washed. And what we really want is a little bit more movement and texture and dimension. She also mentioned that her hair was starting to feel a little bit thinner, or at least that she had noticed less hair than it was when she was younger. So one thing that I would recommend is actually doing lowlights. It would give her hair a lot more dimension. It would give it a lot more movement. It would really make the lighter pieces and even her still quote unquote pepper pieces, which are also a little bit on the lighter side, look more kind of vibrant. And overall, it would actually make her hair look denser. Aside from all of that, the bigger even, I think, bonus to all of this is that it would help to add some richness to her complexion even, because a lot of times a little bit of added depth can create more overall richness in your skin. So if we actually did add a little bit of lowlights in, this is what that could look like. Now, as you can see here, you get kind of an idea of how it could enhance the movement, but you're really not getting the full meal deal, if you will, or the full picture. But what you can see is the dimension that it gives the overall shape. It starts to give it movement even when there's technically no movement there. But it also starts to create an overall denser feel in the look. Now, on top of all of this, it starts to actually give her overall skin tone more richness as well. Now, the best part about this is I know that she wanted to stay away from color for the same reason that most people want to stay away from color, and that is maintenance. People don't want to add a bunch of maintenance, especially once they've let it start to go gray. And this is one of those things, I've talked about it multiple times in the past, that requires little to no maintenance. You basically do it once, and then it's done. You never really see that line of demarcation or recognize it growing out. So realistically, it's one of those things you can do, see the benefit, and then you never have to do it again, and it'll never go through that kind of grow out stage. Let's move locations and dive into some curveballs. Okay, there's way too many people around here, so I can't actually film here, but there's also no possible way that I could actually not show you this. Seriously, babe, what do you think about this view?
That view does not suck.
Right? Okay. If you've been around the channel for a while, comment below and tell me if you know what the meaning behind that is. Because you have to know that it's more than just that view doesn't suck. Have you picked up on it yet? Comment, let me know. I want to see if anybody can actually pick this up. To the curveball section, let's dive into her email and start answering some questions. So the first question, or kind of statement that I noticed was, I'm wondering what to do with them, referring to her bangs, at any length. I'm not sure if I have a large forehead since I'm used to seeing it all the time. Now, while I would say that if we were technically speaking about foreheads, mine's larger. I'd say, Janet, yours is probably a little bit on the larger side, but it's not so big that you absolutely have to wear bangs, at least straight across bangs, so that you can mitigate that concern. But what I would recommend is some just even soft bangs, something that's even like worn off of your face, maybe not across your face, but something more like this. Now, the real thing that we're actually addressing with those bangs isn't so much your forehead, it's actually the fact that there's a little bit of extra length in your face shape. This is going to get very interesting here in just a second when we dive into the second question or statement that she has, and you guys are going to be very confused. Now, the second statement or question that she had was, my first concern is finding the most flattering length and cut for my full face. Right now, I think it's a cut and or styled a little too short in front. Just trying to avoid it hitting my shoulders and flipping. Would more of an angle work? Okay, so there's a couple things that I want to unpack with this one. So first of all, let's talk about the thing that she said about her face. Now, if you remember, I just said that her face is a little on the longer side. However, she said her full face. So what is it? Am I right or is she right? It's a good question. The answer is Janet's right. And you would be right with whatever you think about your face shape. And I think this is very important because I see this actually a lot behind the chair. When you're talking about what you feel comfortable with or what you notice about your face, always recognize that that's going to be more important than what I or any other stylist tells you. If Janet feels like her face is on the fuller side, then we need to address whatever concerns that she has that's making it feel on the fuller side. And therefore, adding length will help to offset that. It doesn't really matter what I think, because if she feels it's on the fuller side and I add more fullness because I think it's on the longer side, she's gonna be going home upset, frustrated, and probably feeling less confident than she could, or maybe even a little bit more insecure about it. With all that said, this is where things get a little bit more interesting. A lot of people, as we get older, have a tendency to feel like their face gets fuller. And this can absolutely happen, and a lot of times if it's like me, it usually is because I eat a lot and I just keep on putting food in my face, and then my face gets rounder with the rest of me, right? But that isn't always true. Many times, part of what makes you feel like your face is fuller is because our skin just flat out starts to sag a bit, right? It's just one of those beautiful things that happens as we age. Now, that many times can make your face feel like it's a little bit fuller because it brings a little bit more fullness, or emphasis, if you will, to the cheeks. And that isn't always the fact that it's fuller, it's just the fact that it's kind of dragging down, and therefore you're noticing it more. And so what we want to pay attention to is actually lifting the eye up the shape, accentuating more cheekbone structure, and pulling the fullness or the emphasis away from the cheeks and or the jowl area. This is why I constantly talk about lifting the eye up the shape, or accentuating things like jaw structure or cheekbones. It's always because it offsets the things that are happening as we age, hence the entire purpose of this whole series. So this is kind of an important thing. Don't miss that. So let me put this in a little bit better perspective for you. Here's a photo of Janet, and this is a bob shape, actually kind of similar to what I would recommend that she move towards. It has layering, there's layering in the front, and the length actually lands right about at her chin. But if you notice here, there's a lot of fullness around the cheek area, kind of at the bottom. There's fullness on top too, but there's still more fullness on the bottom. So what are you seeing? What you notice is the eye is kind of drawn down towards the cheek, and it actually adds a little bit of fullness to her face. But what if we actually change where that volume sits? And let's move that volume away from the cheeks and actually up towards the temple area, which is going to accentuate more of the cheek structure. This is what that looks like. Now you can see that the length is exactly the same. I really haven't changed that much. I took a little bit of bulk out of the sides. And now we're in a position where the cheekbones are more accentuated. The face feels a little bit less full, but we haven't changed the length at all. To me, this is exactly the direction that I would actually head Janet into, because I think it does a really good job of accentuating what we want to accentuate about her face shape and not actually adding more width to it, even though we are technically adding more width because of the length sitting in at the chin. Now, the third question or kind of statement was, I'm really looking for what is the most flattering, and then maybe another option that requires less styling. Here's the one takeaway that I want you to pull from this video regarding this particular comment. Never go to your stylist or any stylist and tell them, I want you to do whatever is the most flattering. You want to think about what length range you're going to be the most comfortable in, and then what your day-to-day routine is in terms of styling. Then from there, we can determine, well, within that length range, within your texture and your goals, well, here's how I would shape the volume, where we take volume away, where we add volume, all those things, how I would layer your hair to get you an end result that is the most flattering within those guidelines. Now, in Janet's specific situation, I actually like this particular style for her for those exact reasons. It's a length range that she's comfortable in. It's also a length range that works well with her hair texture. And most importantly, bob shapes in general have a tendency to just be easy to style. Or you're leaving it long enough to be able to pull back in a ponytail, which is quite a bit longer. And most of the time, that means you're not going to be doing a lot of styling, because styling it actually takes longer than just pulling it back. So you have the long option, you have like the bob shape option that's easy, and then you've got very, very, very short that's easy. So of those three kind of options, I would probably land Janet somewhere around where she is right now, because it kind of makes sense. It also happens to be an overall style and shape that has a lot of versatility without changing the overall style too much, simply by changing the way you dress. Now, we also have to think that her texture is a little bit on the wavy side, and so she can get a lot of movement and texture. So for me, one other option that's still in this length range, and actually a very similar cut, would be something like this. Now, this is a lot of movement. And if I'm honest, probably a little bit more movement that I would recommend. However, it does show you an option that she could move into that I think would be great for her. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is the perfect example of why I say it's not so much of a difference in the way it's cut in this particular bob shape range. It's actually just how you style it. Because this style and this style are basically the exact same haircut, simply styled differently, even though they look like entirely different haircuts. You know, my question is always what you think, so you tell me, comment below. Do you think that she should go totally crazy and just get a bunch of movement and texture like this photo? Or do you think she should do a little bit more contrived, but not overly contrived like this? Do you think color's a good idea, a bad idea? Or do you think I'm completely off base entirely? I'm not. I'm totally on base. 100% correct. She's laughing at me because I said that. I don't appreciate that.
Because, yeah.
Don't. Oh, and a huge, again, thank you to Babbel. I appreciate you sponsoring this video. You guys, if you want to learn a new language, it is an incredible app. So go ahead and check the description below where you can find your link. Save yourself 60% off. I would say that again in Spanish, but you heard my Spanish last time. I'm getting better. I'm working on it, so we'll get there pretty soon.
Look, I'm proud of you.
Un poquito, un poquito.
Un poquito.
Yay!
Or un poco. Which one is it?
Oh, cerveza. Bye.